The train whistle pierced the still desert air of southern Utah as Lydia Jane watched her last 3 coins roll across the dusty platform, her heart sinking faster than the setting sun beyond the red rock cliffs that surrounded Beaver Station. The conductor, a stern-faced man with silver mutton chops and a pocket watch he checked with irritating frequency, cleared his throat for the 3rd time. "Miss, I need your fare or you will have to step aside. There are other passengers waiting." Lydia's fingers trembled as she opened her worn leather purse again, knowing full well it contained nothing but a faded letter from her sister and a broken hairpin. The September heat of 1882 bore down on her shoulders through her threadbare traveling dress, and she could feel the curious stares of the other passengers burning into her back. She had walked 3 days from the mining camp where she had been working as a seamstress, her employer having fled in the night with 2 months of her wages. The train to Salt Lake City was supposed to be her salvation, her chance to reach her sister who had promised her work in a respectable dress shop. "I apologize, sir. I thought I had enough, but I seem to be short." Her voice came out smaller than she intended, and she hated the way it cracked at the edges. She was 22 years old, alone in the Utah Territory, and apparently destined to remain stranded in this dusty railroad town with its handful of buildings and endless stretches of sagebrush. "Step aside then, miss. You are holding up the line." Lydia felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had not cried when her parents died of fever 4 years ago. She had not cried when her fiancé had run off with a saloon girl in Carson City. She would not cry now, not in front of all these strangers. She bent to gather her small carpetbag, her movements slow with the weight of defeat. "Hold on there." The voice came from behind her, deep and rough like gravel in a creek bed, but with an unexpected gentleness threading through it. "How much is she short?" Lydia straightened and turned to see a man stepping forward from the back of the line. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with sun-darkened skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at the edges beneath a dusty black Stetson. His clothes marked him clearly as a working cowboy. Worn denim trousers, a dark blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, a leather vest, and boots that had seen countless miles of hard terrain. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a striking hazel green that seemed to hold both wariness and kindness in equal measure. The conductor huffed. "She is short the full fare, $7.50 to Salt Lake City." It was a fortune. Lydia wanted to sink into the platform. "Please, you do not need to concern yourself with my troubles, sir." The cowboy had already pulled a worn leather wallet from his vest pocket. He counted out the bills with practiced ease and handed them to the conductor. "Consider it a gift, miss. Sir, I cannot accept this. That is far too much money for a stranger to give." Lydia's face burned with embarrassment and something else she could not quite name. No one had shown her such unexpected kindness in longer than she could remember. "Already paid for." He tipped his hat to her, revealing more of a face that might have been carved from the same red rock that surrounded them, all strong lines and weathered by sun and wind. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, giving him a roguish appearance despite the gentleness in his expression. "Train is fixing to leave, and you look like you have somewhere important to be." The conductor punched her ticket with obvious reluctance and gestured toward the train. "Board now, miss, unless you plan to make us late." Lydia clutched her carpetbag and ticket, her mind reeling. "Thank you truly. I will repay you, I promise. If you tell me where I can send the money, no need." The cowboy was already stepping back, making room for the next passenger, but something in his eyes suggested he was not quite as indifferent as he pretended to be. "Safe travels, miss." She wanted to say more, to somehow express the magnitude of what he had just done for her, but the conductor was already herding her toward the train steps. Lydia climbed aboard, her legs shaking, and made her way to an empty seat by the window. As she settled into the worn velvet cushions, she pressed her face to the glass, searching for another glimpse of the mysterious cowboy who had saved her. He was still on the platform, talking to the station master now, his hat pushed back on his head. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, and their eyes met through the smudged window. He gave a small nod, nothing more, but Lydia felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening in a room she had thought permanently sealed. The train lurched forward with a great hiss of steam and a screech of metal on metal. Lydia kept watching as the platform receded, as the cowboy became a distant figure, and then disappeared entirely as the train rounded a bend in the tracks. Only then did she lean back in her seat and allow herself to breathe properly. The woman sitting across from her, a matron in a severe black dress with jet buttons, leaned forward. "You are very fortunate that gentleman intervened. A young woman alone in these parts can find herself in all manner of difficulties." "Yes, I am very fortunate." Lydia touched the ticket in her lap, still not quite believing what had happened. $7.50 from a complete stranger, given without hesitation or expectation of anything in return. Who was he? Would she ever see him again to properly thank him? The train picked up speed, carrying her northward through the Utah landscape. She watched the red rocks give way to different terrain, her mind replaying every moment of the encounter. The way he had spoken with such quiet confidence. The way his eyes had held hers with an intensity that made her feel truly seen for the first time in months. The way his hands had been weathered but gentle as he counted out the money. "Consider it a gift," he had said, as if $7.50 were nothing, as if saving a stranger were the most natural thing in the world. But Lydia Jane was not the sort of woman who accepted charity easily, no matter how desperately she needed it. She would find a way to repay him. Somehow, she would find him again and return every cent. And perhaps, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind, perhaps she would have the chance to properly thank him, to learn his name and his story, to understand what kind of man gave so freely to someone he had never met. The train rolled on through the September afternoon, and Lydia found herself unable to stop thinking about hazel green eyes and a voice like gravel and honey. Her sister, Martha, met her at the Salt Lake City station 3 hours later as the sun was beginning its descent toward the Aqua Mountains. Martha looked older than her 26 years, her face thin and tired beneath her sensible bonnet, but her embrace was warm and fierce. "Lydia, thank heavens. I was beginning to worry when I did not hear from you for so long. The mail service is not reliable in the mining camps." Lydia held her sister tight, drawing strength from the familiar scent of lavender soap and bread. "I am just grateful to be here." As they walked toward Martha's modest boarding house on the edge of the city, Lydia told her sister about the disaster with her employer, about the long walk to Beaver, about her humiliation on the train platform. But when she got to the part about the cowboy, her voice changed, softening in a way that made Martha raise an eyebrow. "A complete stranger paid your full fare and asked for nothing in return. That is either the most generous man in the territory or a fool parting easily with his money." "He did not seem like a fool." Lydia adjusted her carpetbag to her other hand. "There was something about him, Martha, something honest and true. I could see it in his eyes." "Well, honest or not, you will likely never see him again. Cowboys drift from place to place. He could be anywhere by now." Martha's practicality was both comforting and disappointing. "But I am glad he helped you when you needed it. The world needs more kindness." Lydia settled into her new life in Salt Lake City with determined efficiency. Martha's boarding house was clean and respectable, catering mostly to clerks and shopkeepers. The dress shop, where Martha worked, agreed to take Lydia on as well, and soon her days fell into a rhythm of measuring and cutting and stitching, transforming bolts of fabric into proper dresses for the city's growing population. But at night, lying in the narrow bed she shared with Martha in their small attic room, Lydia's thoughts would drift south to Beaver Station. She wondered about the cowboy, tried to imagine what his life might be like. Did he work on one of the big ranches that sprawled across the Utah valleys? Did he have a family, a sweetheart? The thought of the latter made her chest tighten in a way she did not want to examine too closely. "You are thinking about him again," Martha said one night, her voice cutting through the darkness. "That cowboy from the train station." Lydia did not bother denying it. "I keep thinking I should try to find him, to repay him." "Lydia, that is not practical. You have no name, no way to find him. Utah territory is vast. He could be anywhere from the Arizona border to Wyoming by now." "I know." Lydia stared at the ceiling, where the shadows of the tree outside their window danced in the moonlight. "But it feels wrong to just accept it and move on. He gave me something precious when I had nothing. Then, honor the gift by making something of yourself here. Work hard, save your money, and perhaps one day you can pass the same kindness on to someone else who needs it." It was sensible advice, and Lydia tried to follow it. October passed, then November. She grew accustomed to the sounds of the city, so different from the isolated mining camps where she had spent the previous 2 years. She made friends with the other girls at the dress shop, attended church socials, and slowly saved a few coins from her wages. Martha's landlord, a widower named Mr. Peterson, began showing an obvious interest in Lydia, finding excuses to speak with her whenever their paths crossed. He was respectable and kind, if dull, and Martha encouraged the attention. "You could do worse than Mr. Peterson. He owns 3 boarding houses in the city and has a steady income. A woman needs security, Lydia." But Lydia found herself comparing every man she met to a dusty cowboy with hazel green eyes and a voice that seemed to echo in her memory. Mr. Peterson's hands were soft from counting money rather than hard from honest labor. The store clerk who asked to walk her home from church had weak eyes and weaker conversation. None of them made her feel the way she had felt in those brief moments on the Beaver Station platform, as if the world had suddenly come into sharper focus. December brought snow to the Salt Lake Valley, transforming the city into something clean and quiet. The dress shop did brisk business in winter cloaks and warm dresses, and Lydia's fingers were constantly busy with needle and thread. She was measuring a customer for a new dress on a frigid morning 3 days before Christmas when the bell above the shop door jangled. "I will be with you in just a moment," she called out, focused on pinning the hem straight. "Take your time." Lydia's hands froze. She knew that voice, had heard it in her dreams for 3 months. Slowly, she turned, and there he was, filling the doorway of the dress shop like he had stepped out of her imagination and into solid reality. The cowboy from Beaver Station, looking somehow larger and more real than her memories had painted him. He had shed his heavy winter coat, revealing the same type of working clothes he had worn before, though cleaner now. His hat was in his hands, and snowflakes were melting in his dark hair. Their eyes met, and she watched recognition dawn in that hazel-green gaze, followed by something that might have been pleasure. "Well," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Fancy meeting you here, miss." Lydia's customer turned to look, then looked back at Lydia with undisguised curiosity. The other girls in the shop had stopped their work, staring openly at the cowboy who seemed so out of place among the ribbons and lace. "I apologize, but I need just a moment." Lydia somehow managed to hand the pins to her coworker Sarah, and then she was crossing the shop floor, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. You are here, seems that way." Up close, she could see he looked tired, as if he had been traveling hard. There were new lines around his eyes, and his jaw was shadowed with several days of stubble. But his smile was warm, and when he looked at her, she felt that same door in her chest swing open even wider. "Been thinking about you, truth be told. Wondered if you made it safe to wherever you were heading. Salt Lake City. I made it safe thanks to you." Lydia was acutely aware of her coworkers watching, of her customer waiting with her dress half pinned, but she could not bring herself to care. "I have thought about you too. I wanted to find you to repay you for the ticket, but I did not even know your name. Jackson Ellsworth." He shifted his hat to his left hand and extended his right. "Jack to my friends, Lydia Jane." His hand was warm and calloused, and the touch sent electricity up her arm. "I owe you $7.50, Mr. Ellsworth." "Jack," he corrected. "And you do not owe me anything. I told you it was a gift. I do not take charity. It is not charity if it is freely given." His thumb brushed across her knuckles before he released her hand, and the casual intimacy of the gesture made her breath catch. "But if it makes you feel better, maybe you could help me with why I came into this shop in the first place. You need a dress." Lydia managed a smile, trying to regain her equilibrium. Jack laughed, and the sound was even better than she remembered, rich and genuine. "Not quite. My sister is getting married next month down in Beaver. I am supposed to bring her some kind of fancy fabric for her wedding dress. She gave me a list, but I cannot make heads or tails of it. Thought maybe someone here could help." "Your sister is in Beaver. Then what are you doing in Salt Lake City?" "Came up to deliver some horses to a buyer here. I own a ranch about 10 miles south of Beaver. It is small but growing." He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his vest pocket. "Hannah wrote down what she wants, but it looks like gibberish to me. Something about ivory silk and Belgian lace, and I do not know what else." Lydia took the list, her practical mind automatically cataloging the items even as her thoughts raced. He owned a ranch near Beaver. He had a sister getting married. He had been thinking about her. "I can help you with this. It will take me a few minutes to pull everything together. Would you be willing to wait? I've got nowhere else to be, and no better company to keep while I wait." The way he looked at her when he said it made warmth spread through her chest, driving away the December chill that had been seeping through the shop's thin walls. Lydia quickly finished with her customer, then threw herself into gathering the items on Hannah's list. Sarah and the other girls peppered her with whispered questions, but she ignored them, focused on making sure Jack's sister would have everything she needed for a beautiful dress. As she worked, she was intensely aware of Jack watching her from his seat near the stove, his long legs stretched out, completely at ease in the feminine domain of the dress shop. When she had everything assembled and wrapped in brown paper, she calculated the cost and presented it to him. "This should be everything on her list. If she needs help with the actual construction of the dress, she can write to me here, and I will send her detailed instructions." Jack paid without quibbling, though the amount made Lydia wince. Silk and Belgian lace did not come cheap, even in wholesale quantities. "Hannah will appreciate that. She is handy with a needle, but this is beyond her usual skills. She has been planning this wedding for months, ever since Thomas finally got up the nerve to ask her." "When is the wedding?" "Middle of January, weather permitting. Thomas runs sheep on the property next to mine. Good man if a bit shy." Jack tucked the package under his arm. The whole town will turn out for it. Beaver is not large, but folks there know how to celebrate." They stood looking at each other for a long moment, and Lydia felt the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. She did not want him to leave. The realization was sudden and certain and terrifying. "When do you head back to Beaver?" She tried to keep her voice casual. "I was planning to leave tomorrow morning, but I find myself thinking I might delay a day or two. There is not much waiting for me at the ranch that cannot keep a little longer." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her feel pinned in place, like a butterfly under glass. "You would not happen to have any time free this evening, would you, Miss Jane? I know a respectable restaurant not far from here, and I would like to hear how you have been faring these past months." Behind her, Lydia heard Sarah make a small squeaking sound of excitement. Her customer was watching with unabashed interest. Even Mrs. Henderson, the shop owner, had emerged from the back room and was observing the scene with calculating eyes. "I finish work at 6 o'clock. The words came out before Lydia could second-guess herself. "There is a restaurant on 2nd South Street not far from here, Mrs. Peterson's place. I will find it." Jack settled his hat back on his head, and the gesture had a finality to it like sealing a promise. "6 o'clock then, Miss Jane." "Lydia," she said. "If we are eating dinner together, you should call me Lydia. Lydia." He said her name like he was tasting it, testing the feel of it in his mouth. "I will see you at 6, Lydia." After he left, the dress shop erupted in excited chatter. Sarah grabbed Lydia's arm with squealing enthusiasm. "That is him, is it not? The cowboy from the train station. Oh, Lydia, he came looking for you." "He came looking for fabric for his sister," Lydia corrected, but she could not keep the smile off her face. "He came to the only dress shop in Salt Lake City where you happen to work." "Out of all the shops he could have chosen." Mrs. Henderson raised an elegant eyebrow. "I may be getting old, Miss Jane, but I am not blind. That young man has traveled a long way for more than just silk and lace." Lydia's hands shook slightly as she tried to return to her work. Mrs. Henderson was right, she knew. Salt Lake City had at least 5 dress shops and several dry goods stores that carried the kind of fabric Hannah needed. Jack Ellsworth had found his way to this specific shop, to her, 3 months after their brief encounter on a train platform in southern Utah. The afternoon dragged by with painful slowness. Lydia measured and cut and stitched, but her mind was elsewhere, cataloging everything she knew about Jack Ellsworth and everything she wanted to know. He owned a ranch. He had a sister named Hannah who was marrying a man named Thomas who raised sheep. He had hazel green eyes and a scar through his eyebrow and hands that were gentle despite their calluses. He had traveled to Salt Lake City and sought her out. Even if he was pretending, it was purely coincidental. At 5:45, Lydia hung up her work apron and fetched her cloak from the back room. Martha would be expecting her for dinner at the boarding house, but that could not be helped. She would explain later, though she already dreaded that conversation. Martha would have opinions, and not all of them would be favorable. Sarah helped her pin her hair more neatly and loan her a nicer bonnet than the plain one Lydia usually wore. "You look lovely. He will not be able to take his eyes off you." "It is just dinner between 2 people who happen to cross paths twice. Do not make it into more than it is." But Lydia's heart was singing as she said it, and from Sarah's knowing smile, her friend did not believe her protestations any more than she believed them herself. Jack was waiting outside the restaurant when she arrived, looking like he had made his own attempts to clean up. His hair was damp at the edges, and he had shaved, revealing the strong line of his jaw. He had changed into a cleaner shirt, deep green this time, and his boots had been brushed free of dust. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. "Thank you. You look very nice yourself." It was inadequate, but Lydia could not find better words. Her vocabulary seemed to have deserted her entirely. Mrs. Peterson's restaurant was warm and fragrant with the smell of roasting meat and fresh bread. They settled at a corner table, and for a few moments they simply looked at each other across the white tablecloth, as if verifying that this was real, that they were actually here together. "I am glad you came," Jack said finally. "I was not sure you would. I am glad you asked. I have wondered about you since September." Lydia folded her hands in her lap to keep from fidgeting. "I wondered if I would ever see you again." "Same here." He leaned forward slightly. "I am not going to pretend this was pure coincidence, Lydia. I asked around about you. Found out you were working at the dress shop. Maybe that was too forward of me, but I wanted to know you were all right, and then I wanted to see you again. You asked around about me." Something warm bloomed in her chest at the admission. "I did. Spent the last 3 months thinking about a woman I talked to for maybe 5 minutes. Figured I was going crazy." He gave a self-deprecating smile. "But then I thought, maybe she is thinking about me too. Maybe I am not as crazy as I feel." "You are not crazy." Lydia's voice was barely above a whisper. "I have thought about you constantly. I tried not to, tried to be practical, but I could not seem to help it." The waiter appeared to take their order, and the interruption gave them both a moment to collect themselves. When he had gone, Jack reached across the table, palm up, an invitation. Lydia placed her hand in his, and the contact felt like coming home. "Tell me about your ranch," she said. "Tell me about your life in Beaver." So he did. Jack painted a picture of a small ranch carved out of rough country, of long days working cattle and horses, of building something from nothing with his own 2 hands. His parents had died when he was 19, and Hannah was 15, leaving them the land but little else. He had kept them afloat through sheer determination, working other ranches to earn money while slowly building up his own herd. Now, at 26, he was finally seeing the fruits of that labor. The ranch was profitable, modest but growing. He had 12 head of breeding stock and 3 good horses, with plans to expand into horse breeding full-time. It is hard work, and there are plenty of days when things go wrong. But it is mine, you know. I built it with my own hands, and there is satisfaction in that. Lydia understood completely. She told him about her own struggles, about losing her parents and then her fiancé, about the string of jobs that had taken her across the Utah Territory, about arriving at the Beaver Station platform with nothing but determination, and then almost losing even that. "You saved me that day," she said softly. "I have never properly thanked you for that. I was at the end of everything, and you gave me hope again. You do not need to thank me. I just did what anyone should do." But his hand tightened around hers. "Though I am glad I was there, glad I could help." "Why did you do it? You did not know me. You had no reason to help." Jack was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. "My mother used to say that kindness is never wasted, even if you never see the results. And you looked like you were fighting so hard not to cry, trying to be strong even when everything was falling apart around you. I have been there, Lydia. I have been at the end of my rope with nowhere to turn. Someone helped me once when I needed it most. I figured it was time to pass that forward." "Who helped you?" "A rancher named Samuel Davis. I was 17, and my father had just died. We were about to lose our land because we could not make the loan payment. Mr. Davis bought some horses from me, paid me 3 times what they were worth. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he did not make me feel small for accepting it. Just said that someday, when I was in a position to help someone else, I should do it. So that is what I have tried to do." Their food arrived, but neither of them was very interested in eating. They picked at their plates, more focused on each other than the meal. Jack told her about Hannah's excitement over her wedding, about Thomas's nervousness, about the ranch dogs who followed him everywhere. Lydia told him about the dress shop, about Martha's boarding house, about the strange adjustment to city life after years in smaller towns. Time seemed to fold in on itself. One moment they were sitting down to dinner. The next the waiter was politely suggesting they might want to settle their bill as the restaurant was preparing to close. Jack paid, waving away Lydia's offer to contribute, and then they were outside in the December night, their breath misting in the cold air. "I should walk you home," Jack said, offering his arm again. Lydia took it, grateful for the excuse to stay close to him a little longer. The streets were quiet, most sensible people already tucked into their warm houses. The snow crunched under their feet, and above them the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. "How long are you staying in Salt Lake City?" Lydia asked as they walked, dreading the answer. "I was planning to leave tomorrow, but I find I do not want to." Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. "Lydia, I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I have never felt this way before, like I have been waiting my whole life to meet someone and did not even realize it until I saw you on that train platform. I feel it too." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating at once. "I thought I was being foolish, imagining things that were not there." "You were not imagining anything." He cupped her face with his free hand, his palm warm against her cold cheek. "I want to court you properly, Lydia. I want to know everything about you. I want to see if this thing between us is as real as it feels. But you live in Beaver and I live here. That is 3 hours by train, further by horse. I know, it would not be easy, but I think it might be worth it. I think you might be worth it." His eyes searched hers in the starlight. "What do you think? Am I completely out of my mind?" Lydia thought about the past 3 months, about the way Jack had haunted her thoughts despite every attempt to be practical. She thought about Mr. Peterson and his boring respectability, about the safe, predictable life Martha wanted for her. And then she thought about the way her heart had leaped when Jack walked into the dress shop, the way the world seemed brighter when he smiled at her. "I think you might be a little out of your mind," she said, rising on her toes to close the distance between them. "But I think I am too." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious. It was Lydia's first real kiss, the fumbling exchange with her former fiancé having been nothing like this. This was warmth and promise and coming home all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "I am staying another week," he declared. "Hannah can wait for her fabric. I need time with you. A week is not very long. Then I will come back. I will come back as often as I can until we figure this out." He kissed her again, less carefully this time, with more heat. "If you want me to, that is. I want you to." Lydia felt like she was glowing from the inside out. "I want all of this, even though it terrifies me." They walked the rest of the way to the boarding house slowly, stealing every possible moment together. At the front steps, Jack kissed her one more time, long and sweet, before finally forcing himself to step back. "Can I see you tomorrow, after you finish work?" "Yes." "And the day after that, and the day after that." Lydia laughed, dizzy with happiness. "I have 3 months of getting to know you to make up for." She floated up the stairs to her room, her lips still tingling from his kisses, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Martha was sitting up in bed reading when Lydia entered, and one look at her sister's face told Lydia she was in for an interrogation. "You look like you have been thoroughly kissed," Martha observed, setting down her book. "I am assuming this has something to do with Mr. Peterson." "Nothing to do with Mr. Peterson." Lydia hung up her cloak and began unpinning her hair. "Do you remember the cowboy I told you about, the one from the train station?" Martha's eyes widened. He is here. In Salt Lake City. He came to the shop today, supposedly to buy fabric for his sister. But Martha, he asked around about me. He came looking for me. We had dinner and we talked and he kissed me, and I feel like my entire world has turned upside down in the very best way. Lydia, slow down, you barely know this man. I know it is fast and probably foolish. But Martha, I have never felt this way before, not ever. When I am with him, it is like everything makes sense, like I have found something I did not even know I was looking for. Martha sighed and patted the bed beside her. Sit down and tell me everything, leave nothing out. So Lydia did, spilling out the entire evening in breathless detail. Martha listened, her expression moving from skeptical to concerned to reluctantly charmed as the story progressed. He sounds like a good man, Martha admitted when Lydia finally ran out of words. But Lydia, think practically for a moment. He lives 3 hours away. How would a courtship even work? You cannot just abandon your job to go running off to Beaver every time he has a free moment. I know. We will figure it out. Lydia was not willing to let practical concerns dampen her joy, not tonight. He is staying for a week. We will talk about it, make plans. A week is not very long. Then he will come back. He promised he would come back. Martha squeezed her hand. I hope he keeps that promise. I hope he is everything he seems to be. You deserve happiness, Lydia. You have had precious little of it these past years. Just promise me you will be careful with your heart. I promise. But even as she said it, Lydia knew it was a promise she might not be able to keep. Her heart was already involved, already leaping ahead to possibilities she barely dared to imagine. The next 6 days passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing certainty. Jack met her after work every evening, and they explored Salt Lake City together, learning each other with an urgency born of knowing their time was limited. He told her about his childhood, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the responsibility that had fallen on his young shoulders when his father died. She told him about her dreams, about wanting to open her own dress shop someday, about the fear that had dogged her since her parents' deaths, that she would always be one disaster away from destitution. You are stronger than you think, Jack said one evening as they walked through the snowy streets. You have survived things that would break most people, and you are still standing, still fighting. That takes courage, Lydia. They talked about everything and nothing, discovering shared tastes in literature despite their different educations, laughing over the same kinds of jokes, falling into easy silences that felt as comfortable as the conversations. Jack was surprisingly well-read for a cowboy, his mother having been a schoolteacher before her marriage. He had a quiet intelligence and a dry sense of humor that caught Lydia off guard and made her laugh until her sides hurt. On the 3rd evening, Martha invited Jack to dinner at the boarding house, subjecting him to careful scrutiny over pot roast and potatoes. He won her over completely by asking intelligent questions about her work and complimenting her cooking with genuine enthusiasm. Even Mr. Peterson, who had been openly suspicious of this rival for Lydia's attention, grudgingly admitted that Jack seemed decent enough. He is rough around the edges, Martha said later, but there is real substance there. And the way he looks at you, Lydia. Like you are the only thing in the world that matters. On the 5th day, Jack took her to meet the man who had bought his horses, a prosperous rancher on the outskirts of the city. Mr. Wilson was impressed with Jack's stock and made noises about wanting to do more business with him in the future. That young man has a good eye for horses, Mr. Wilson told Lydia while Jack was examining some of the other animals in the stable. Mark my words, he will make a success of himself. Already has, really, considering what he started with. He works very hard, Lydia said, pride warming her voice. Hard work is good, but it takes more than that. It takes intelligence and integrity. Your young man has both." Mr. Wilson gave her a knowing look. "He also has it bad for you, if you do not mind my saying so. Talked about you the whole time we were conducting business the other day." The time flew by too quickly, and suddenly it was Jack's last evening in the city. They had dinner again at Mrs. Peterson's restaurant, but the joy was muted by the looming separation. After the meal, they walked aimlessly through the cold streets, neither wanting to say goodbye. "I hate this," Jack said finally, stopping in the shadow of a large building. "I hate knowing I have to leave tomorrow and I do not know when I will see you again." "Then come back soon as you can." Lydia clutched his coat, not caring who might see. "I need you to come back, Jack." "I will." "I have to make sure Hannah gets her fabric and help with the wedding preparations. But after the wedding, I will be back. Middle of February at the latest." "Can you wait that long?" 2 months seemed like an eternity, but Lydia nodded. "I will wait. I will write to you every week and you can write to me. I am not much for writing, but I will do my best." He kissed her fiercely, desperately, like he could somehow imprint himself on her memory. "This is not the end, Lydia. This is just the beginning. I know we have not talked about the future much, but I need you to know this is not some passing fancy for me. I am in this for the long term if you are." "I am." She kissed him back with equal fervor. "I am in this, Jack, completely." He left on the morning train, and Lydia went to the station to see him off despite the early hour and the bitter cold. They held each other until the last possible moment, until the conductor was bellowing for passengers to board, and the train was hissing impatiently on the tracks. "I will see you soon," Jack promised, his lips against her ear. "I promise, Lydia. This is not goodbye." Then he was gone, disappearing into the train car, and Lydia stood on the platform watching until the train was a distant speck on the southern horizon. The cold sank into her bones as she stood there, the same cold she had felt on a different platform in Beaver 3 months ago. But this time she was not alone and desperate. This time she had hope, fragile and fierce, burning in her chest like a candle flame. The next 2 months tested that hope in ways Lydia had not anticipated. January brought brutal cold to the Salt Lake Valley, storms that shut down train service for days at a time. Jack's letters came irregularly, delayed by weather and unreliable mail service, and in the gaps between them, doubt crept in. What if he had changed his mind? What if being back on his ranch had made him realize that a long-distance courtship was too difficult? What if he met someone else, someone closer and more convenient? Martha tried to be supportive, but her practicality kept showing through. "You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this might not work out. Long-distance courtships rarely do, especially in this country. The distances are too great, the challenges too many." But then a letter would arrive, full of Jack's characteristic directness and unexpected sweetness, and all of Lydia's doubts would evaporate. He wrote about Hannah's wedding, which had gone off beautifully despite a snowstorm that had nearly stranded half the guests. He wrote about the ranch, about a difficult calving, about his plans for the spring. And he wrote about missing her, about counting the days until he could see her again. Lydia wrote back faithfully, filling her letters with details of her days, her work, her thoughts. She told him about the difficult customers and the easy ones, about Martha's latest lectures on practicality, about Mr. Peterson's continued attempts to court her despite her clear disinterest. She told him about her dreams and fears, things she had never shared with anyone else. The letters sustained them through the long winter months, but they were poor substitutes for the real thing. Lydia ached to see Jack, to hear his voice, to feel his arms around her. She found herself staring south out the shop window during slow periods, as if she could somehow see all the way to Beaver if she just looked hard enough. February finally arrived, bringing with it the first hints of spring. The days began to lengthen, and the worst of the winter storm subsided. In his last letter, Jack had said he would be arriving in Salt Lake City on the 15th, and Lydia had been counting down the days with ridiculous eagerness. She was at the train station an hour before his train was due, too anxious to wait at the dress shop a moment longer. Martha had sighed and shaken her head but had not tried to stop her. The platform was crowded with other people meeting arriving passengers or departing themselves, and Lydia paced nervously, scanning every face for one particular hazel green-eyed cowboy. The train pulled in with its usual fanfare of steam and screaming brakes. Lydia stood on her toes, searching the emerging passengers. Where was he? Had he missed the train? Changed his mind? Then she saw him, stepping down from a middle car, and her heart leaped so hard it almost hurt. He looked thinner than she remembered, the winter having been hard on everyone, but his smile when he spotted her was like the sun breaking through clouds. Lydia did not care about propriety or who might be watching. She ran to him, and he dropped his bag to catch her, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around before setting her down and kissing her thoroughly. "God, I missed you," he said against her mouth. 2 months is too long, way too long, much too long. Lydia could not stop touching him, reassuring herself that he was real and solid and here. "Do not ever leave me for that long again. I will do my best." He kissed her again, then pulled back to really look at her. "You are beautiful. Did you get even more beautiful in the past 2 months, or did I just forget? You are a terrible flatterer." But Lydia was glowing. "How long can you stay?" 3 days, maybe 4 if I push it. I have a ranch to run and spring calving is starting." "But Lydia, I need to talk to you about something important." "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, at least I hope not." He picked up his bag with one hand and kept the other firmly around her waist. "Can we go somewhere private? Somewhere we can really talk?" They ended up back at Mrs. Peterson's restaurant, in the same corner table where they had shared their first meal together. Lydia's stomach was fluttering with nerves, unsure what this important conversation might entail. Jack ordered coffee for both of them but did not touch his when it arrived. Instead, he reached across the table and took both of her hands in his. "These past 2 months have been the longest of my life," he began. "Every day without you felt like a week. Every letter from you was like water in the desert. And I realized something, Lydia. I realized that I do not want to do this anymore. This being apart, this seeing each other a few times a year if we are lucky." Lydia's heart sank. This was it then, the practical end to an impractical romance. "I understand. The distance is too much." "I knew it might be, but I had hoped, no, that is not what I mean." Jack tightened his grip on her hands. "I mean I want you to come to Beaver. I want you to marry me, Lydia. I know it is fast. I know people will say we are being foolish, but I do not care. I love you. I think I loved you from the moment I saw you on that train platform, trying so hard to be brave. Marry me. Come live with me on the ranch. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." Lydia stared at him, her mind reeling. Marriage. He was proposing marriage. They had known each other for a little over a week in person, though they had been corresponding for 2 months. It was crazy, impulsive, exactly the kind of thing Martha would say was doomed to failure. "Say something," Jack said, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked uncertain. "Even if it is no, I can handle no, but this silence is killing me." "You love me." The words came out as barely a whisper. "I love you. Completely, desperately, utterly. I tried to talk myself out of it, tried to be sensible, but it did not work. You are in my blood, Lydia, in my bones. I wake up thinking about you and fall asleep the same way. I want to build a life with you. I want to show you the ranch and watch your face when you see the mountains at sunrise. I want to go to sleep next to you every night and wake up next to you every morning. I want everything with you." Tears were streaming down Lydia's face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "I love you too. I have loved you for months, even though I barely knew you, even though it made no sense. I love you, Jack Ellsworth. Is that a yes? Will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob and a laugh at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you. I will go to Beaver and live on your ranch and be your wife. Yes to all of it." Jack was around the table in an instant, pulling her to her feet and kissing her so thoroughly that several other patrons applauded. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, he pressed his forehead to hers. "We can do this as fast or as slow as you want. If you need time to plan, to prepare, I understand. But Lydia, I want you to know that I am serious about this, about us. This is not some whim that I am going to regret later. I know you are serious. I am too." Lydia wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "But Jack, I do not need a fancy wedding or a long engagement. If it were up to me, we would get married today and leave for Beaver tomorrow." "Really?" Hope blazed in his eyes. "Really? I do not care about a big celebration or a white dress. I care about starting my life with you. The sooner the better." They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. They would get married in 3 days, giving Lydia enough time to give notice at the dress shop and pack her belongings. Martha would stand up with her, and Jack would ask Mr. Wilson, the rancher who had bought his horses, to stand up with him. They would have a simple ceremony with a minister, then take the train to Beaver to start their new life together. Telling Martha was harder than Lydia had anticipated. Her sister listened to the news with an increasingly dismayed expression, and when Lydia finished speaking, Martha was quiet for a long moment. 3 days, she finally said. "You have known this man for a week in person, corresponded with him for 2 months, and now you are marrying him in 3 days. I know it seems fast. It does not seem fast, Lydia. It is fast. It is reckless." Martha rubbed her temples. "What if you are making a terrible mistake? What if he is not who he seems to be? What if you get down to Beaver and realize you have married a stranger? Then I will deal with it. But Martha, I know this is right. I know it in my bones. Jack is a good man, and I love him, and he loves me. That is enough. Love is not always enough. Love does not pay the bills or keep the ranch running or see you through the hard times." But Martha's voice had softened. "Oh, Lydia, I am not trying to ruin your happiness. I just want you to be sure. I want you to have thought this through." "I have thought it through. I have thought about nothing else for 2 months." Lydia took her sister's hands. "I know you are worried, and I love you for it, but this is my choice, my life, and I am choosing Jack." Martha pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Then I hope he deserves you. I hope he spends every day of his life making you happy, because if he does not, I will track him down to that ranch and make him regret it." The next 3 days were a whirlwind of activity. Lydia gave her notice at the dress shop, and Mrs. Henderson was surprisingly understanding. "I saw the way that Cowboy looked at you. When a man looks at a woman like that, holding on to her would be like trying to hold water in your hands. Go, be happy, and if you ever need anything, you write to me." The other girls threw together a hasty farewell party, gifting Lydia with lengths of fabric and sewing supplies for her new life. Sarah cried and made Lydia promise to write. Even Mr. Peterson offered stiff congratulations, though he looked like he was swallowing nails as he did it. Martha helped Lydia pack her few possessions, adding linens and kitchen items from her own small stores. "You will need these. Ranch life is not like city life. You will be doing all your own cooking and cleaning. I know. I am not afraid of hard work. I know you are not." Martha folded a quilt carefully and placed it in the trunk. I just wish you were not moving so far away. Beaver is not exactly close. It is only 3 hours by train. I will visit. You can come visit me too, see the ranch, meet Jack's sister. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold. Lydia dressed in her best dress, a deep blue wool that Martha had helped her alter to fit better. She pinned her hair up carefully and surveyed herself in the small mirror above the washstand. She did not look like a typical bride, but then, this was not a typical wedding. Jack met her at the small church Martha attended, looking almost unbearably handsome in a dark suit that he admitted Hannah had forced him to buy for her wedding. Mr. Wilson was with him, grinning broadly. The minister, Reverend Thompson, was a kind-faced older man who asked them only once if they were certain of what they were doing. "More certain than I have ever been of anything," Jack said, and Lydia nodded her agreement. The ceremony was brief and simple, but to Lydia it was perfect. Jack's hands shook slightly as he slid the simple gold band on her finger, and his voice was rough with emotion as he spoke his vows. When Reverend Thompson declared them husband and wife and told Jack he could kiss his bride, the kiss was sweet and reverent, a promise sealed. They had a small celebration dinner back at the boarding house, Martha having prepared a special meal. Mr. Wilson told stories about Jack's childhood that made everyone laugh, and Martha gave a toast that managed to be both heartfelt and full of sisterly threats about what would happen if Jack did not treat Lydia well. That night, in the small room Jack had rented at a respectable hotel, Lydia became truly his wife. He was patient and gentle, mindful that this was new territory for her, and when it was over, she lay in his arms feeling utterly content. "No regrets," he murmured against her hair. "Not a single one. You. Only that I did not meet you sooner." He kissed her temple. "But I have got you now, and I am never letting go." They left for Beaver the next morning on the early train. Martha came to see them off, embracing Lydia tightly before reluctantly releasing her. "Be happy," Martha whispered. "Write to me. Visit when you can." "I will. I promise." Lydia hugged her sister one more time, then let Jack help her onto the train. They settled into their seats, and as the train pulled out of the station, Jack wrapped his arm around Lydia and drew her close. She rested her head on his shoulder and watched the city recede, giving way to open country. "What are you thinking?" Jack asked. "That my life has changed so much in 6 months. Last September I was standing on a train platform with nothing, and now I am married to the most wonderful man I have ever met, heading to start a new life." She laced her fingers through his. "Thank you for paying for that ticket, Jack. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." "I will always see you, Lydia. You are the brightest thing in my world." He kissed her forehead. "And you do not need to thank me. Everything I have, everything I am, is yours now. We are in this together." The train carried them south through the Utah landscape, past fields still brown with winter but beginning to show hints of green. They talked and dozed and watched the scenery change, comfortable in their new closeness. Other passengers smiled at them, recognizing newlyweds when they saw them. When they finally pulled into Beaver Station, Lydia felt a strange sense of coming full circle. This was where it had all started, where a desperate woman had met an unexpected savior. Now she was returning as Jack's wife, ready to start her new life. Hannah was waiting on the platform, practically bouncing with excitement. She was a pretty woman with dark hair like Jack's and warm brown eyes. The moment they stepped off the train, she threw herself at Lydia, hugging her with unself-conscious enthusiasm. "I am so happy to meet you. Jack wrote about you constantly, and I have been dying to meet the woman who finally caught my brother's heart. Welcome to the family, Lydia." Thomas was there too, a quiet man with red hair and a shy smile. He shook Lydia's hand with formal politeness but warmth in his eyes. Hannah has been preparing for your arrival all week. Fair warning, she has redecorated your bedroom and reorganized your kitchen. Jack, you might not recognize your own house. As long as she did not get rid of my coffee pot, I will survive." Jack loaded their luggage into the wagon waiting nearby. "Ready to see your new home, Mrs. Ellsworth?" Lydia loved the way her new name sounded. "I am ready." The ranch was about 10 miles south of town, accessible by a rough road that wound through red rock country. As they drove, Jack pointed out landmarks, telling her stories about the land. Hannah sat in the back of the wagon, continuing her cheerful chatter, asking Lydia questions about Salt Lake City and the dress shop and married life. When they finally rounded a bend and Jack's ranch came into view, Lydia caught her breath. It was modest, certainly, but beautiful in its simplicity. A sturdy wooden house with a front porch, a barn and several outbuildings, corrals holding horses and cattle. Beyond it all, the red rock cliffs rose like cathedral walls and the sky stretched overhead in endless blue. "It is not much yet," Jack said, suddenly sounding uncertain. "But it is solid and it is ours. I have been working on expanding the house. Thought we might need more room eventually for the future." "It is perfect." Lydia meant it. She could see the care Jack had put into every aspect of the place, the pride of ownership in every well-maintained fence and sturdy building. "Show me everything." They spent the afternoon exploring. Hannah had indeed been busy, transforming the bedroom into something more welcoming with new curtains and a colorful quilt. The kitchen was well stocked, and someone had left fresh bread and preserves as a welcome gift. The barn housed 3 horses that Jack introduced like old friends, and the cattle grazing in the near pasture looked healthy and fat. "Spring calving starts in a few weeks," Jack explained as they walked the property. "It will be busy then, and I will have to hire some extra help. But for now, it is just me running things, with Thomas helping out sometimes when his own work allows." As the sun began to set, painting the cliffs in shades of gold and crimson, Hannah and Thomas finally took their leave, Hannah extracting a promise from Lydia to come to dinner later in the week. Then it was just Jack and Lydia, alone in their new home. "It is really ours," Lydia said wonderingly, standing on the front porch and looking out at the land. All of this and then some. I have got plans, Lydia, plans to expand the herd to build up the horse breeding operation. It will take time and hard work, but we can build something real here, something lasting." He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Does it scare you, being so far from everything you knew?" "A little," she admitted, "but I have been alone and afraid before. This time I have you. That makes all the difference." They stood together watching the sunset, and Lydia felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. This was right. This was where she was supposed to be. The first weeks of Lydia's new life were an adventure in adjustment. Ranch life was vastly different from city life, and while she had always been a hard worker, there were new skills to learn. Jack was patient, teaching her about caring for the horses, about reading weather signs, about the rhythms of ranch work. She learned to cook on the wood stove, to make bread from scratch, to preserve food for the lean months. Hannah became a fast friend, visiting often and helping Lydia navigate her new role. Thomas proved to be as quiet as his wife was talkative, but kind-hearted and always willing to lend a hand when Jack needed help with some larger project. Spring arrived in earnest, and with it came calving season. Jack was up at all hours, checking on expectant cows, helping with difficult births. Lydia learned to assist, overcoming her initial squeamishness to do what needed doing. When a calf was born healthy, the sense of accomplishment was extraordinary. "You are a natural at this," Jack said one morning after a particularly long night. They were both exhausted and covered in mud, but the new calf and its mother were both doing well. I knew you were tough, but this exceeds all expectations. I am just doing what needs to be done. But Lydia glowed under his praise. She was discovering reserves of strength she had not known she possessed, finding satisfaction in the physical labor and tangible results of ranch work. They fell into a rhythm, Lydia and Jack. Their days were full of work, but their nights were their own, spent in each other's arms, talking about their days and their dreams. Jack was an attentive husband, thoughtful and affectionate, never taking her for granted. Lydia bloomed under his care, her happiness evident in her bright eyes and ready smile. The months passed, winter giving way to spring, giving way to summer. They worked side by side, building their life together. Jack's horse breeding operation began to take off, word spreading about the quality of his stock. Lydia started taking and sewing work from the women in Beaver, her skill with a needle quickly becoming known. Money was sometimes tight, but they were making it work. In July, Lydia realized she had missed her monthly cycle. Then she missed another. The third month, she finally allowed herself to believe what her body was telling her. She told Jack one evening after dinner, nervous despite knowing he would be thrilled. I think I am going to have a baby. I am fairly certain, actually. Jack stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then his face split into the widest grin she had ever seen, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared the horses. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing like a madman. We are going to be parents, you are sure? As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. But Jack, all the signs are there. A baby. He set her down carefully as if she might break. We need to get you to a doctor. We need to make sure you have everything you need. Should you even be working so hard? Maybe you should rest more, Jack. I am pregnant, not dying. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine. But she was touched by his concern, by the way his hand immediately went to her still flat stomach. We have months to prepare. The baby would not be due until late February or early March. They made the trip to Beaver the next day, and the doctor confirmed what Lydia already knew. She was about 3 months along, healthy and strong, and there was no reason to expect any complications. Jack was beside himself with joy and worry in equal measure, fussing over her until she had to laugh and push him away. I am going to be a father, he kept saying, wonderstruck. Me, a father, can you believe it? Hannah was ecstatic when they told her, immediately beginning plans for baby blankets and tiny clothes. Thomas congratulated them with his quiet smile and started building a beautiful cradle as a gift. The whole town seemed to share in their happiness, neighbors stopping by with advice and gifts and good wishes. As Lydia's pregnancy progressed, Jack became even more protective. He took on more of the heavy work, insisting she rest more. Lydia humored him to a point, but refused to be treated like an invalid. She continued with her sewing work, continued helping around the ranch as much as she was able. Her body changed, her belly swelling with their growing child, and Jack looked at her like she was performing miracles. You are so beautiful, he would tell her, his hands gentle on her pregnant belly. The most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Winter came again, and with it the worry about the baby arriving in the coldest, harshest months. But their house was warm and well supplied, and Dr. Morrison had promised to come as soon as he was sent for. Martha wrote regularly, full of excitement about becoming an aunt, promising to visit as soon as the weather allowed. Lydia went into labor on a snowy night in late February, 18 months after that fateful day on the Beaver Station platform. Jack was beside himself with panic, but Hannah arrived quickly, calm and capable, having assisted with several births before. Dr. Morrison made it through the snow just in time. And after 12 hours of hard labor, Lydia brought their son into the world. He was perfect, with dark hair like both his parents and his father's hazel green eyes. Jack cried when he first held him, this tough cowboy reduced to tears by the weight of his tiny son in his arms. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you." Jack could not seem to stop kissing her, kissing the baby, his face wet with tears. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never settled on one, and now, looking at their son, Lydia knew exactly what he should be called. Samuel. Samuel Davis Ellsworth, after the man who helped you when you needed it most. Jack's eyes widened, then filled with fresh tears. "That is perfect." Samuel Davis Ellsworth. Welcome to the world, Sam. The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Jack was a devoted father, helping with night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floors with Sam when he cried. Hannah visited daily, helping Lydia recover and navigate the challenges of new motherhood. Thomas continued his quiet support, taking on extra work at the ranch so Jack could spend more time with his new family. Martha finally made it to visit in April, making the journey from Salt Lake City to meet her nephew. She held Sam with tears in her eyes and told Lydia she had been right about everything. "You knew, did not you? You knew Jack was the right choice, that this life was what you needed." "I am sorry I doubted you. You were just being protective. That is what big sisters do." Lydia hugged Martha with her free arm. "But yes, I knew. From that very first day on the train platform, some part of me knew." Sam grew from a tiny baby into a chubby toddler, filling the house with laughter and chaos. The ranch continued to prosper, Jack's reputation as a horse breeder growing steadily. They hired more help, built new structures, expanded their herd. Lydia's sewing business grew as well, women coming from surrounding towns for her skilled work. When Sam was 2 years old, Lydia found herself pregnant again. This time Jack was slightly less panicked, though no less thrilled. Their daughter, Rose, arrived in the spring, a tiny thing with her mother's delicate features and her father's stubborn chin. Sam was initially skeptical of this small creature who demanded so much attention, but he soon became a devoted big brother, always wanting to help care for his baby sister. The years passed in a blur of work and love and family. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, celebrated good years and struggled through lean ones. Jack and Lydia grew together, their love deepening with each passing season. They learned each other's strengths and weaknesses, learned how to fight and make up, learned the dailiness of marriage, and somehow never lost the spark that had drawn them together on that train platform. Sam grew into a boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did, following Jack around and asking endless questions about horses and cattle. Rose proved to have her mother's talent with a needle, sitting beside Lydia and learning to sew by the time she was 4 years old. When Rose was 3, Lydia had another child, a boy they named Matthew, who was all energy and mischief from the moment he could crawl. Hannah and Thomas had children of their own, 2 daughters who were close in age to Jack and Lydia's children. The families were constantly together, the children growing up more like siblings than cousins. The ranch continued to expand, eventually becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. Jack's horses were sought after throughout the territory, and Lydia's dress shop, which she opened in town when Matthew started school, became the place to go for quality clothing. On a warm September evening, exactly 10 years after Jack had paid for a stranger's train ticket, they sat together on their front porch watching their children play in the yard. Sam was teaching Rose how to rope a fence post, while Matthew ran circles around them, shrieking with laughter. "Do you ever think about that day?" Lydia asked, her hand in Jack's. "At the train station, all the time." Jack squeezed her fingers. Best $7.50 I ever spent. It changed everything, did it not? One small act of kindness, and look what came from it. That is the thing about kindness. You never know what it might lead to. Mr. Davis taught me that, and that day at the station, I got to pass it forward. He pulled her closer. Got a lot more back than I gave, though. Got all this. Got a life I did not even dare dream about back when I was struggling to keep the ranch afloat. We built it together. Lydia leaned her head on his shoulder, content. Everything we have, we built together, and we are not done yet. Jack kissed the top of her head. We have got years ahead of us still. Watching these children grow up, maybe grandchildren someday. Growing old together on this land we have worked so hard for. The sunset painted the cliffs in brilliant colors, and in the distance, Lydia could see their cattle grazing peacefully. The ranch house had grown over the years, expanded to accommodate their growing family. The barn was larger, the corrals more numerous. They had built something lasting here, something real. "I love you," she said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "I love you more than I can say. I love you too. Always have, always will." Jack turned her face toward his and kissed her, sweet and familiar. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy you barely knew. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for giving me hope when I had none left." Lydia kissed him back, pouring 10 years of love and gratitude into it. Their children's laughter floated across the yard, and as the sun set behind the red rock cliffs, Jack and Lydia Ellsworth sat together on their porch, surrounded by everything they had built together. From that first moment of unexpected kindness on a dusty train platform, to this moment of perfect contentment, their love story had unfolded in ways neither could have imagined. But then, the best love stories always do, beginning with a simple act of compassion and growing into something that spans a lifetime. Jack had paid for a stranger's passage and told her to consider it a gift. What he had received in return was beyond price. A partner, a family, a love that would endure through all the seasons of their lives. As darkness fell and the stars began to appear in the vast Utah sky, they called their children inside for supper. Sam carried Matthew on his shoulders while Rose skipped ahead, chattering about her day. Jack held the door open for his family, then followed Lydia inside, his hand finding hers one more time. The door closed behind them, shutting out the night, and inside the warm house, the Ellsworth family gathered around their table. They held hands while Jack said grace, thanking God for their many blessings, for their health and prosperity, for the love that bound them together. And in that moment, surrounded by the family she had helped create, Lydia sent up her own silent prayer of thanks. Thanks for a cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart. Thanks for a second chance when she had thought all chances were gone. Thanks for the life she had found in this wild, beautiful country, and for the love that had made it all possible. Years continued to pass in their predictable yet precious rhythm. Sam grew into a young man who inherited his father's way with horses and his mother's thoughtful nature. At 19, he began courting a girl from town, the daughter of the dry goods store owner, and Jack and Lydia watched with amusement and nostalgia as young love blossomed in their son. Rose, at 16, had developed into a talented seamstress who helped run Lydia's dress shop with increasing independence. She had her mother's creative eye and business sense, and already several young men in town were vying for her attention, though she seemed in no hurry to settle on just one. Matthew, now 13, was the wild card, full of energy and curiosity that sometimes got him into trouble but also made him endlessly entertaining. He was the one most likely to bring home injured animals or come up with elaborate schemes that required his parents' patient intervention. Hannah and Thomas's daughters, now young women themselves, remained close to their cousins. The two families still gathered regularly for dinners and celebrations, their bond as strong as it had been in those early days. The ranch had grown beyond Jack's wildest dreams. They now employed several full-time ranch hands, and Jack's horses were known throughout the Western Territories. Lydia's dress shop in Beaver was thriving, with 2 other women working for her and a steady stream of customers from surrounding towns. Jack was 41 now, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples, the lines around his eyes deeper from years of squinting into the sun. But he was still strong, still vital, still the man who made Lydia's heart quicken when he smiled at her across the dinner table. Lydia, at 37, had settled into herself in ways she could not have imagined as that desperate young woman on the train platform. She moved with confidence now, secure in who she was and what she had built. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Jack surprised her by taking her back to Beaver Station. They stood on the platform where they had first met, the scene of both her lowest moment and the beginning of her greatest joy. "I wanted to bring you back here," Jack said, his arm around her waist. "To the place where it all started, to remember what a gift it was, finding each other." Lydia looked around the familiar platform, remembering that September day so long ago. The fear and desperation she had felt, the weight of defeat pressing down on her shoulders. And then a voice from behind her, rough and gentle. "How much is she short?" "I was so lost that day," she said softly. "I thought my life was over, that I had run out of chances, and then you appeared like an answer to a prayer I did not even know I was praying. I was not expecting you either." Jack turned her to face him. "I just saw someone who needed help, but from the moment I looked into your eyes, something changed. I did not understand it then, but I felt it, like recognizing someone I had been waiting for my whole life." "Do you think we would have found each other if not for that day? If I had somehow managed to pay my own fare, if I had gotten on that train without needing your help?" Jack considered this. "I like to think we would have. That somehow, someway, we would have ended up here together. But I am glad we did not have to find out. I am glad it happened exactly the way it did." A train whistle sounded in the distance, and they watched as the locomotive pulled into the station, just as it had all those years ago. Passengers disembarked and boarded, the platform filled with the same controlled chaos of people in transit, lives intersecting briefly before diverging again. "Let us take the train to Salt Lake City," Jack said suddenly. "Just for the night. We can visit Martha, have dinner at Mrs. Peterson's restaurant, walk the streets like we did when we were courting. What do you say?" Lydia laughed, feeling young and reckless. The children were old enough to manage without them for a day. The ranch would not fall apart in their absence. "Let us do it. It has been years since we had an adventure." They bought their tickets, and this time Lydia had more than enough money in her purse. As they boarded the train, Jack leaned close and whispered, "Consider it a gift," making her laugh and smack his arm playfully. The trip was delightful, a brief return to the carefree days of their courtship. Martha was thrilled to see them, and dinner at Mrs. Peterson's restaurant was full of reminiscing and laughter. They spent the night at a nice hotel, just the two of them, and it felt like a honeymoon all over again. On the train ride back the next day, Lydia rested her head on Jack's shoulder and thought about how far they had come. From strangers to friends to lovers to partners in every sense of the word. They had built a life that exceeded anything she had dreamed possible in those dark days before she met him. "What are you thinking about?" Jack asked, his voice rumbling beneath her ear. "How lucky I am. How grateful. For you, for our children, for the life we have built." Sometimes it feels like it is too good to be true, like I might wake up and find it was all a dream. It is real. Jack kissed her forehead. Every bit of it is real, and you deserve every bit of it. You have worked just as hard as I have to make our life what it is. We are partners, remember. Equal shares in all of it. As they pulled into Beaver Station, Lydia saw their children waiting on the platform. Sam stood tall and responsible, Rose beside him with Matthew bouncing impatiently nearby. They waved when they spotted their parents, and Lydia's heart swelled with love. "We made those," she said to Jack, nodding toward their children. "We brought them into the world and raised them, and look how wonderful they have turned out." "They got all the best parts from you," Jack said. "The good looks, the intelligence, the kindness. I just contributed some stubbornness and decent horse sense. You contributed much more than that." Lydia stood as the train slowed, gathering her belongings. "You gave them a father who shows them every day what it means to be a good man. That is worth more than anything else." Sam helped his mother down from the train, while Rose hugged her father enthusiastically. Matthew peppered them with questions about their trip, hardly pausing for breath between inquiries. They all piled into the wagon for the drive home, the children filling them in on everything that had happened in their absence. Life continued its steady march forward. Sam married his sweetheart, Emily, in a beautiful ceremony that had half the town in attendance. They built a house on the far edge of the ranch property, and Sam took over more and more of the daily operations, giving Jack time to focus on the horse breeding that had always been his passion. When Emily gave birth to their first child 2 years later, a daughter they named Lily, Jack and Lydia became grandparents. Holding that tiny baby, seeing so much of Sam and yet something entirely new and unique, Lydia understood why people said grandchildren were special. All the joy of babies without quite as much of the sleepless exhaustion. Rose eventually settled on a young banker named Michael, who had pursued her with patient determination. Their wedding was elegant and sophisticated, reflecting Rose's refined tastes. They moved to Salt Lake City, where Michael worked, and Rose opened her own dress shop that quickly became successful. Lydia missed having her daughter close by, but she was proud of Rose's independence and ambition. Matthew proved to be the surprise. He had always been the wild one, the child they worried about most. But at 20, he announced his intention to study veterinary medicine, having developed a passion for animal care through years of working alongside his father. He went east to school, sending letters home full of his studies and experiences. When he returned 3 years later with his degree, he set up a practice in Beaver and quickly became invaluable to all the ranchers in the area. Jack and Lydia settled into the roles of ranch patriarch and matriarch. They had more grandchildren as the years passed, their house filling regularly with the noise and laughter of family gatherings. They watched their children grow into capable adults, saw their grandchildren take their first steps and say their first words, witnessed the continuation of the legacy they had built together. On quiet evenings, when the house was theirs alone again, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunset, just as they had done for decades. Their hands would find each other automatically, fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. They did not always need words anymore. Sometimes the comfortable silence said everything that needed saying. "You have any regrets?" Lydia asked one such evening. They were both in their 60s now, their children grown, their grandchildren growing. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Jack was quiet for a long moment, giving the question the consideration it deserved. "I wish I had met you sooner. Wish we had more years together, though I know that is greedy when we have already been blessed with so many. But regrets? No. Every choice I made led me to you, led us to this life. I would not change any of it. Neither would I. Lydia squeezed his hand. Even the hard parts, the struggles and setbacks, they made us who we are. They taught us what we needed to know to build something lasting. They grew old together gracefully, their love maturing like fine wine. Jack's hair went fully silver, and he developed a limp from an old injury that acted up in cold weather. Lydia's hands grew stiff with arthritis, making the detailed sewing work she loved increasingly difficult. But they adapted, supporting each other through the inevitable indignities and difficulties of aging. Sam ran the ranch now with his own sons working alongside him. Rose's dress shop in Salt Lake City had expanded to 3 locations. Matthew's veterinary practice was thriving. Their children had built their own successes. Taken the foundation, Jack and Lydia provided and constructed their own dreams upon it. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. 3 generations filled the house and yard, children and grandchildren, and now even a few great-grandchildren. There was music and dancing, abundant food, and toast after toast honoring the couple who had started it all. Hannah, now in her 70s and moving slowly but still sharp as ever, gave a speech that had everyone laughing and crying. I remember when Jack first told me about Lydia, about paying for a stranger's train ticket. I thought he was crazy, throwing away that much money on someone he did not know. But then I met her and understood. Some people are just meant to find each other, and my brother and Lydia were 2 of those people. They have built something beautiful here, not just this ranch but this family, this legacy of love and hard work and kindness. We are all better for having them in our lives. Late that night, after the guests had gone home and the house had quieted, Jack and Lydia climbed the stairs to their bedroom slowly, their steps measured but steady. They prepared for bed with the ease of 4 decades of shared routine, then lay together in the darkness, Jack's arm around Lydia's shoulders, her head on his chest. 40 years, Lydia marveled. It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Best 40 years of my life. Jack's voice was sleepy but content. Here is to 40 more. They both knew that was unlikely. They were both in their 60s, and while they were still healthy, the years were catching up with them. But it was a sweet thought, the idea of spending another 4 decades together, watching their family continue to grow and thrive. I love you, Lydia whispered into the darkness. From that first day on the train platform to this moment right now, I have loved you with everything I am. I love you too. Jack kissed the top of her head. Always have, always will. That is a promise I will keep until my last breath and beyond, if there is anything beyond. They drifted off to sleep together, secure in the knowledge that whatever time they had left, they would face it together. They had built something remarkable from that chance encounter on a train platform, something that would outlast them both. Their love had created ripples that spread outward, touching countless lives, creating new families and new stories. The morning sun would rise again over the red rock cliffs, painting them in shades of gold and crimson. The ranch would wake to another day of work and life and family. And Jack and Lydia Ellsworth would rise to meet it together, as they had done for 40 years, as they would continue to do for all the days they had left. Because that was what love did. It endured. It grew. It transformed the ordinary into the extraordinary. It took a desperate woman and a generous cowboy and turned them into something greater than themselves, into a partnership that would echo through generations. And it all began with $7.50, a train ticket, and 4 simple words. Consider it a gift. Those words had changed everything, had opened doors neither of them knew existed, had started a love story for the ages. And as Jack and Lydia held each other in the peaceful darkness, surrounded by the life they had built together. They knew with absolute certainty that every moment, every struggle, every joy had been worth it. Their story had begun on a dusty train platform in the Utah Territory in September of 1882, when a kind-hearted cowboy had seen a young woman in need and done the right thing. It had grown through courtship and marriage, through challenges and triumphs, through the raising of children and the building of a legacy. And now, in their twilight years, they could look back and see the full arc of it, the beautiful pattern that had emerged from all those individual moments stitched together. They had lived a good life, a full life, a life rich with love and meaning. And when their time eventually came to leave this world, they would leave behind something precious. A family that understood the value of kindness, the power of love, and the importance of seeing people when they needed to be seen. But that time was not yet here. They still had days and months and hopefully years left together. They had grandchildren to watch grow, great-grandchildren to meet, sunsets to observe from their porch, and quiet moments to share in the home they had made together. And so they slept, Jack and Lydia Ellsworth, the cowboy and the seamstress who had found each other against all odds and built something extraordinary. Their breathing synchronized in the darkness, their hearts beating in rhythm, as they had for 40 years and would for all the years to come. The red rock cliffs stood eternal watch over their ranch, and the Utah sky stretched overhead in infinite possibility. And the love story that had begun with a simple act of kindness continued on, a testament to the transformative power of compassion and the enduring strength of true love.